Okay, I think we're up and running. I was not able to be here for the sound check today. We almost had just a video check here because we didn't have any sound. But I think we took care of that situation. Let's see. I don't see me up yet. Maybe I'll go to the church's site. Hold on just a second. There we are. Okay. Got a couple of folks watching already. Welcome. There's a notice here that Restream's access is soon going to expire to our Facebook or something, whatever. Anyway, just so you know. Yeah. Yep. Tell those powers that be who know what they're talking about. Yes. All right. Well, welcome to those of you who are in the room. We are missing a few. Every week we have a different crowd. It's like if everybody came at once, we'd be all right. But anyway. And welcome to those of you who are watching online. All the stuff that I didn't get to do during the practice round because I was delivering beds. Me and Glenn over here, we delivered a couple of bunk beds. So that is 4 kids who will not be sleeping on the floor tonight. So that's cool. But anyway, so I'm sorry I'm drinking my Spark in front of y'all. Guesses as to what flavor it is? Anyone?
Strawberry, mango.
Got a strawberry, got a mango. There's actually a mango strawberry.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Of course not.
This is actually watermelon. So anyway, I hadn't had watermelon in a while, so when we ordered, I got us some watermelon. All right. Well, y'all don't care about all that. That's not why you tuned in. You tuned in because you want to know whose birthday it is today, right? I hope that's not why you tuned in, but, it's a side note. So are there any birthdays that y'all know of? Anybody watching at home, any birthdays that you know of? You want to give a shout out for happy birthday? Nobody that we know of? Well, here, I know of a few. Now, there's not many birthdays today, and there's not many deaths. But I got a few events. So let's talk about what happened on this date in history. First of all, happy birthday. Well, I'm not a huge fan, but I thought maybe some of y'all would be. 1942, happy birthday to Barbra Streisand. She's 82. Y'all believe that? Anyway, she's born on this date in Brooklyn.
I will tell you that 42 is not, but I'm not going to tell you how lame.
All right. Okay, yep, Jean says Dorothea's birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday to her. Also on this date in 1972, happy birthday to Chipper Jones. Yeah.
Baseball, right?
Oh, baseball. Right, yes, baseball.
Oh, yeah, he played.
We're struggling in this room today. So anyway, that means Chipper is 52 years old. Wow. He was born in DeLand, Florida. And then, for the younger crowd, 1982, happy birthday to Kelly Clarkson. 42 years old today. She was born in Fort Worth, Texas. Of course, she was the first winner. Y'all don't know who she is? She was the first winner of American Idol. So, anyway. All right, a few deaths on this date. If you like literature, these first 2 are for you. 1731 on this date, Daniel Defoe died. He was the one who wrote Robinson Crusoe. He was approximately 70 years old, but they don't really know. It's kind of debated. And then also on this date in 1942, Lucy Maud Montgomery died. She wrote Anne of Green Gables. She was 67 years old. Did y'all read that? Anybody read that?
I didn't remember she wrote it.
Yeah.
I've seen the movie.
Saw the movie? Oh, really? There was a movie?
Read a series or whatever it was.
Oh, okay.
There's something on TV.
Is it modern? I mean,
I
like,
don't think so.
oh, okay. All right. That would make sense.
Is that on TV?
And then this table should know this better than this table, is all I'm saying. But on this date in 2004, Estee Lauder died. So she had a cardiopulmonary arrest. I don't even know what that is. Something to have to do with the heart, I guess.
Her heart quit.
Okay, heart just quit.
There was a movie.
So anyway, she was 97 when she died. So something good about her makeup. Maybe you and I should start wearing it, Glenn. I don't know. No, I don't want to live that long.
I don't know if it's that good.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So a few events on this date. In 1184 BC, that's a long time ago. 1184 BC. This is the traditional date that is given, although they don't really know for sure, but this traditional date given for when the Greeks entered Troy using the Trojan horse. So, now let's scoot a few thousand years ahead of that. 1800, on this date, the U.S. Library of Congress is established with a $5,000 allocation. 1877. I didn't mean to give the year. I was going to see if y'all could guess what year this was. The last federal occupying troops withdraw from the South.
In 1877.
No. 1877. I'm just kidding. So, yeah. So you're talking what? 12 years after the end of the Civil War. But okay. So here, guess this. What city did they withdraw from? The last city that they withdrew from. Those Yankees finally leaving us alone. It was not Atlanta. It was New Orleans. So, anyway. Okay, 1888, Eastman Kodak was founded by George Eastman, better known as Kodak. 1898 was the beginning, on this date, was the beginning of the Spanish-American War, because Spain declared war on America because we told them that they had to get out of Cuba or else, and they didn't. Instead, they declared war on us. And we won, so whatever. 1913, the Woolworth Building opens in New York City. It was $13.5 million, which was a lot back then, but it was also 792 feet, which made it the tallest building in the world at the time. So, anyway, thought that was interesting. Two more things. When was the first, okay, here's you go. What year was the first satellite TV streamed? Guesses. Because everything's streaming now. I mean, you remember you just go and you turn on the TV. You see how I did it? Pulling the little knob. You remember doing that? And then you just had to crank the channel or whatever. That was easy. Now you stream like all these different, it's just weird. It's just weird now. But, so, that's all we do now is stream from a satellite. When was the first TV?
1975.
75? Any other guesses?
So we had a ginormous satellite in our yard. I mean, it was huge.
Like, kind of like the one that's out here?
Probably.
Uh-huh. We need to get rid of that thing. That's another thing the building grounds needs to do.
And that was the early 1980s. So Miss Ann might be about right, because I'm sure we didn't get it right when it came out.
Yeah. You didn't, because it was 1962.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 1962, MIT, what do you call it, streamed, basically, TV from a satellite from California to Massachusetts. So, anyway, that was interesting. And then, for us in here, we care about this. Maybe, I'm not even sure who all's online. From what I've seen, everybody here is in the state of Georgia. 1979 on this date, Ray Charles's Georgia on My Mind was designated as the official state song. So, anyway, there you go. All that on this date. Okay. Turn your Bibles now, if you will, to Revelation chapter 8. I don't know how far we're going to get tonight. I am prepared to get, I'm prepared to go through the entire chapter, but that's just not happening. Because I need to make sure that we have the bridge, that we understand the bridge that we're looking at. So far, we have opened up 6 seals. Okay, you remember the seals were the unfolding judgments that are being played out during the 7-year tribulation. Okay, the church has been raptured. We're not here. The Antichrist is on the scene. And in chapter 6, we saw the first 6 seals broken. And all that meant, in case you haven't been with us, all that meant was these are the unfolding judgments of God that are being unleashed upon the earth. And they're pretty bad. I mean, they're not good. A lot of warfare. There's been a lot of pestilence that was an outcome of that. Famine, those kinds of things. And then in chapter 6, again, you can go back there and look if you want to, but the fifth seal is actually martyrs, and this matters today, okay? Well, probably not going to get to it today. But it matters in chapter 8. The fifth seal are the prayers of martyred saints crying out for justice. And it's tempting when you're just there and you don't put it in context. It's tempting to say, well, like, what kind of judgment is that? Like, so, nobody gets hurt over that just because somebody prayed for justice. But that is going to have a direct effect on chapter 8. So, maybe next week we get there, I hope, but I've already started talking too much, so we'll see. And then the sixth seal that is broken is, there's all kind of things we've got earthquakes and the volcanic eruptions that occur because of those earthquakes, and it's just frightening what is going on with the geophysics of planet Earth. I mean, they're really going crazy now, unlike anything that we've ever seen or experienced so far. And so that's just scary. I mean, I've heard of people who have just been around tremors and they talk about it being scary. But now you're talking about stuff that the Richter scale has never measured before. And so it's going to be a frightening thing that's going to be taking place to the point, remember, when we get to the end of chapter 6, up to this point, when you're talking about warfare and famine and pestilence and those kinds of things that have been going on, everything that people have experienced to this point, people have been able to explain away. Well, this is just people who can't get along. This is, you got the Antichrist, and some people like him and some people don't, and, it's a product of the leadership and all that kind of stuff. You can blame it on whatever you want to at this point. By the time the sixth seal hits, there is no explanation other than this is God. This is the judgment of God, and they're scared out of their britches. I mean, they just don't, and so to the point where they're like, hide us, kill us, anyway, somehow get us out from this. That's how bad things have gotten, okay? And that kind of thing is about to continue. So, if you remember, we've already passed now between the fourth and the fifth seal, we've already passed the halfway point of the tribulation. So we've only had 4 judgments in the first half of the tribulation. And now the remaining, I guess, you could say that it depends on how you count it, but the remaining 15 to 18 of those judgments, 15 to 17 of those judgments are going to happen the last half of the tribulation. They're going to come a lot faster, and they're going to come a lot harder, and they're going to be much more terrifying than what we've already seen. Okay, so that was chapter 6. Chapter 7, we took 2 weeks to go through that, very general, and we saw that it's an interlude. It's a let's catch our breath for a second, and it's before the seventh seal opens, so it's kind of a good time because things are about to really pick up steam. So now's a good time for us to kind of reflect. Let's look back. Let's answer the question at the end of chapter 6, which who is able to stand? Chapter 7 says, well, there are some people who can stand, and those are people who've put their faith and their trust in Jesus Christ, whether they had a Jewish background or a Gentile background. They're able to withstand these judgments because they have the protection of God. And that's what chapter 7 is, okay? And there was something else that I brought out that I didn't bring out that I thought was interesting as I was looking back, because, as I read through this stuff again, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have said that and all that. I kind of second-guessed myself. But here, I want you to look at Revelation chapter 7. See, we can't even get to chapter 8 because I'm going back to chapter 7 now. What's up? Revelation chapter 7 and verse 13 says, the elders came to John and said, these who are clothed in the white robes, who are they? And where have they come from? And John's like, dude, I don't know. I mean, what you asking me for? You're the one who knows. He says, my Lord, you know. And he said to me, These are the ones who have come out of the great tribulation. Now, there are some people who look at that and they say it's at this point that the rapture takes place. They're talking about people who are raptured. And if you remembered our going back into to the fall, when we were using some highfalutin words, we talked about mid-tribulationists, people who believe that the rapture takes place in the middle of the tribulation. This is one of the verses that they look at. But more than likely, these are people who have not been raptured; they have been martyred for the faith, and they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason, they are before the throne of God, and they serve Him day and night in His temple. In His temple. Now, that word for temple is used 16 times in the book of Revelation. And it's not talking about the larger structure of the temple. It is speaking specifically of the inner shrine, what we would call the Holy of Holies. So, the reason I stop and mention this is because there are implications to that. If these people are in the Holy of Holies, calling out to God day and night in the Holy of Holies, what does that say about them? Now, it's a very complicated question, and I don't want to try to bait you or anything like that. Although, as soon as I start to say it, some of you are going to see, oh yeah, I know what you mean. But for those who don't, the Holy of Holies was a portion of the temple that no one was allowed to go in without serious repercussions, as in death repercussions. You were killed for walking into the Holy of Holies if you were not invited. There was only one person invited into the Holy of Holies. Who was that? That's not a trick question. The high priest. And now you have all these people who are in the Holy of Holies, symbolically speaking. I mean, the Holy of Holies was no bigger than this room, so you're not going to have thousands of people in this room. So, symbolically speaking. So, that speaks, number one, to the priesthood of the believer. We talk about the priesthood. It's one of the great tenets of Baptist life. It's priesthood of the believer. And this certainly points to that being true. It also points to the fact that Jesus, as you probably read last month in the story of somewhere along the way, you at least heard reference to Jesus at his death when the temple was torn in two, and everybody now has access to God. So this verse is pointing to a few different things. It's pointing to the fact that we are priests. It points to the presence of God, that He is in their presence. And it speaks to provision. Because look at verse 16. They will hunger no longer. There will be no more thirst. The sun will not beat down on them, nor any heat. And so God is going to provide for them. And so they have been, throughout this tribulation period, their persecution probably, the pattern of mankind can be seen in the Holocaust, where death was not the first thing that became most of the people who died. There was also a time of persecution, of denial, of going without, of starvation, of physical brutality, all those kinds of things before death came. And so these people who are standing around the throne, now they have been through great distress, and now they are being comforted. So that's a picture of chapter 7. Chapter 7 is that interlude. It's the break in the action. We've been covering chronologically. Here's what's been going on, and now let's just take a break and take a breather. In chapter 8, where we are finally going to get to, after I've been rambling for 15 minutes, what we'll finally get to is a picking up of the story at the end of chapter 6. Okay? So chapter 7 is a break. Chapter 8 is kind of now let's get back into it. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, here's what's been going on. Okay? Chapter 6 ended with the breaking of the sixth seal. Chapter 8 and verse 1 is going to now talk about the breaking of the seventh seal. When the Lamb broke the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Now, you look back at chapter 6 and look at how that ended, okay? With all that chaos going on, you had earthquakes and all the aftermath of that, and you had the volcanic eruptions and the stuff coming down from the sky and all that was going on with that. You had people who were screaming, and like grown strong men who were screaming for their lives and all this kind of stuff. You just had this huge chaotic sign. And now, the breaking of the seventh seal, everything goes quiet. So that's a huge difference from what we've seen. But really, we're just talking about what we would say the phrase for the day is the calm before the storm. The breaking of the seventh seal is the calm before the storm. And what is going to happen now is with the breaking of the seventh seal, we're going to get to that thing that I had talked about before. And again, I don't want to make too much of it because I know most of you were here when we've talked about this stuff before. But just as a reminder, my favorite illustration of this, it's just mine because it's kind of what speaks to me, is when you shoot up fireworks and one of them goes up and it goes boom. And then those little lights kind of flare off, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, all those little lights and those little flares, they go boom too. And these secondhand booms were contained inside the first boom. That's what we see happening with these judgments. The seventh seal is going to go boom, which is silent, but it's going to go boom, and out of that seventh seal is going to come the trumpet judgments, the 7 trumpet judgments. And if you remember, we had said before that there are some, and the reason I keep bringing this up is because there are some people who would read this vastly different. So you got to understand where we're coming from if you've heard Revelation taught before, and you're going to say, well, that's not what they said. Well, one of the things that they could be looking at is there are some people who believe that the seal judgments and the trumpet judgments and the bowl judgments, which are to come, there are 7 of each one of those, and they believe that it is a retelling of the same judgments unfolding. But it should be obvious by now when we're given a halfway point and those kind of things. That is not what I'm teaching. I'm teaching that these are in succession, and so it is a totally different set of judgments. But we are still able to read this chronologically. It is an unfolding of the judgment of God. Now, what we're going to find in chapter 8 are the first 4 trumpet judgments. And it's interesting that what you have now is the first judgment is what is going to be happening on land, on earth, where we touch and feel. The second and the third judgments are going to be on the sea and the water and the rivers. And then the fourth judgment is going to be in the sky. Now, I want you to get this contrast. Hear me now. Hear me closely. The book of Psalms teaches us that the heavens declare the glories of God. Chapter 8 is going to give a totally different story. I guess you could still say it falls under that category, but in a totally different way. Because now the heavens are going to declare the wrath of God. That's what we see unfolding in chapter 8. Okay? Now, the silence, not only is it the calm before the storm, but there's probably, for those who are witnessing this, for those of us, we have a ringside seat in heaven, and we're witnessing this, and certainly even for John as he's telling the story, there is also a lot of quiet because there is shock over the grim nature, the grimness of what is to come. It is a foreboding. Like, oh my goodness. Can you believe what we were looking at? Can you believe what is about to happen? And so there's just, it's almost like shock. I just can't believe what we're about to see, because like from our vantage point, we'll look back on our time on planet Earth and we'll be like, we've never seen anything like this. And so there's just this, almost this haunting, and that's the kind of literarily, is that even a word, speaking, that is almost what we're sensing here, is this sense of awe and fear that is going to break out for those who are seeing this. So, trying to look, I've got a note here. I'm trying to even see what it says. It's been there. Oh, okay, whatever. All right. So it says here that it came for about half an hour, and right before chaos is about to ensue once again, and that happens in verse 2. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Now, these angels, they are truly angels. Verse 3 talks about another angel. And that, again, that's just like we saw in chapter 6, is another of the same kind. Because the reason I bring that out is because some people look at verse 3 and they would say that this is Jesus. 2 problems with that. Number one, it does mean another of the same kind, just like the other angels that we see, and there's nobody like Jesus, so that doesn't count. But also, Jesus is never described as an angel in the book of Revelation, so it would simply not fit, or really anywhere in the New Testament, so it really wouldn't fit with what we see. So that we see these angels, they are standing before God, and they've got these 7 trumpets, and again, just like the seals, the sounding of these trumpets is going to come in succession, one at a time. They might overlap, but they're going to come one at a time, and it's going to be the judgment of God. Another angel came and stood at the altar, holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him, so that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints went up before God out of the angel's hands. What saintly prayers are we talking about? Prayers that you and I pray?
No?
I don't think so.
Who do you think?
The prayers that we saw in the 5th seal in chapter 6. Remember we said that there was a connection between them? They are calling out for what? What do we say that they're calling out for? They're praying to God for what? Justice. And God says, you want it? Hang on for a second. It's coming. And now we get to, trumpet 1.0. And he's like, okay, here we go. Here's the answer to your prayers. And so justice is about to be served. That's the terrifying thing. That's the terrifying thing about that 5th seal judgment. So the angel took the censer, filled it with fire of the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there followed peals of thunder and sounds and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. You remember that silence in verse 1? Silence gone away. Straight back to it. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound them. And just remember this. The people, okay, so get the picture now. Again, if we're going to bridge chapters 6 and 8 together to tell one story. Not that chapter 7 doesn't matter, but remember, as far as chronology is concerned, chapter 7 it's not really a part of this. So, chapter 6, you've got people who are hiding in the midst of the chaos because of the earthquakes and the volcanoes and stuff coming from the sky and all that kind of stuff. And so what are they doing? They've gone into hiding. And they're like, save us. They're hiding under their beds. You've got grown men who are hiding in their closets. They're gone into caves. They're anywhere they can go. They're gone into the basements, into their shelters and whatever. And then, after all that settles down, Then you have some quiet. Quiet in verse 1. Now, yeah, we were just watching a movie. Was it just last night, night before, something like that? I think it must have been night before. And there's that's okay. I used to have a seminary professor who used to say, if that's not Jesus, tell him you call him back. But somebody, you got a bad guy and they're out there to hurt somebody and, people are hiding and all that kind of stuff. Well, somebody gets into a tussle or whatever and kills the bad guy. And they show the bad guy who's over here and they're laying down or whatever and they're killed. And so everybody comes out of their hiding place and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden the person who is supposed to be dead becomes Michael Myers and raises up from the dead or whatever and, starts torturing everybody again. Well, that's the kind of thing that you're expecting out of these movies. Well, I got it too. I got somebody calling me too. Well, that's really kind of what happens here. Everybody comes out of where they're hiding from because things are quiet. It's like, okay, everything's calmed down now. Everything's in the past. Everybody's good. Let's come out here. Let's assess the damage, and let's kind of see what's going on. And as soon as they come out from where they're hiding, chaos ensues again. I mean, if it wasn't God's just judgment, it's almost like this would be cruel, thinking everything is okay. And God's like, ha ha, no it ain't. Here it comes again. And so that's exactly what happens. They are prepared, getting ready to blow their trumpets very loudly. Just like in Exodus chapter 9, verse 25. Here, trumpets mean judgment. The first sounded, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. And so, again, you have here probably what it appears to me is you've got more volcanic activity that is taking place. Because you're talking about that things which are burned, you're talking about hail and fire. They're coming down from somewhere up above because it's thrown to the earth, so it's coming from somewhere up above. I mean, it could be some nuclear fallout, that kind of thing. I mean, there are other ways to explain it, but the pattern that we have, the context that we have, that there is going to be judgments that are coming from earth. Here in chapter 8, it just seems to fit the context better that it would be something earthy going on. And that just seems to be the best explanation to me. We're talking about stuff raining down that is fire, that burns, and those kinds of things. So earth is burned up, trees burned up, green grass burned up. In fact, hold on just a second. Romans chapter 1. If you're taking notes, you can write that down. Romans chapter 1 and in verse 25. This is kind of the answer to the problem that man has had from the beginning. That is that they continually mistake who to worship. And in Romans chapter 1, verse 25, it says they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator who is blessed forever. And so God says, hey, I'll burn up your gods. And so that's what he does. Verse 8, the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So, again, in correlation with volcanic activity, or so many of the geological formations that we have are volcanoes that mix with water, in great bodies of water in some form or fashion, and both in destruction and in the formulation of these new geological forms and those kinds of things. burning fire thrown into the sea, and as a result, there's a lot of death. We see that in the plagues in Exodus chapter 7. The sea becoming blood, it becomes where it is undrinkable. So that it's no wonder that a third of the creatures who were in the sea and had life died. And then it says, it kind of throws out another thing that happens when these geological formations are thrown into the sea. It says a third of the ships were destroyed. Any idea what that might be referring to? What would ships have to do with this? What now? Okay, that is the result. That you're exactly right. Commerce is most definitely interrupted. I mean, remember, we just had, just a couple of weeks ago, when the ship hit the bridge in Baltimore, and all of a sudden all these ships were backed up into their port, and they couldn't get in, and so some of them came down here to Savannah, because all of a sudden you have this disruption in economic activity and the flow of economics. And even more so, just a few years ago, in the height of the pandemic and those kinds of things, all these ports were closed, and it just became such a mess. And so many of the goods that we rely on, the prices were jacked up, and because they were out in the middle of the sea and those kinds of things. So the end result of this is economic turmoil, which is just a precursor to some crazy things that we're going to read about coming up in the near future. But specifically, that the ships were destroyed is related to the fact that this volcanic activity disrupted geological formations in the sea, in the oceans and the seas. What would be a natural outcome of that? We've seen these before, not too long ago, actually, within the last few years. Tsunamis. And they come and they destroy ships, so that they're not just relegated to the sea looking for a port to come into. All the goods that are on them are totally destroyed as well. Down, blah, 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 blah. Like the Titanic. Gone. Just gone. And so you think about, like, for those of you who live in Savannah, have you ever been on River Street when those things come by now and they're getting bigger and bigger? And now they're talking about the Talmadge Bridge, how they're going to raise that. I don't see how they're going to do that without tearing the thing down, but they say they're going to be able to. Makes no sense to me, but they've got to make them bigger and bigger and bigger. They're already enormous. I remember I need to shut up. I remember coming to the end of Truman, to the north end of Truman, and you're about a mile. There's the thing that says a mile till exit, to the exit off of Truman, to the last exit. And you look up over that ramp, and I remember one time seeing a ship go by there, and it looked like you could reach out and touch it. It was that enormous. It was just unbelievable. Think about those things, many of them in the bottom of the ocean. I know it happened in St. Simon's a few years back. I've got pictures. I went there to see it. You can get right up next to it just about and take pictures of it. It was an amazing sight, but it had just tilted over on its side and was remaining at the top. That's not how these things are going to work. They're totally going to be destroyed, and all the cargo with it. All that in the second trumpet. All right? Now, I got to be quiet because we got other stuff to do. I know that. Do y'all have a choir tonight? Is there a choir tonight? No? Okay. Well, hey, let's just keep going. I'm just kidding. We said we get out at 7. We'll get out as soon as we can. So anyway, that's where we are with the trumpets. I hope that made a little bit of sense. I wonder if maybe, help me remember this next week, okay? Help me remember, because I won't remember. Help me remember to take questions first thing. First thing to take questions, okay? If there are any. You may not have any, but I don't want to assume that I'm getting through. So yeah, just think about any questions that you might have that we've looked at so far. Don't start reading chapter 14 and come back and ask me questions. Let's first half of chapter 8 and before and prior to. And look through that anything that I've talked about, if you've got questions or whatever, that's where we'll start next week. Y'all can ask here in the room. You'll be able to ask as soon as we hit live. As soon as we start streaming, you can start putting them in your in the comments section, and I'll do the best that I can to answer them. I'm not a guru in this stuff, but I'll do the best that I can to answer it. Okay, fair? All right. Okay. Well, what prayer requests do you have? Go ahead and start typing those in the prayer in the comment section as well. Any prayer requests? Candace, have we had any that have been sent to us prior to this time?
Grandma Nell, you know her?
Grandma Nell, I know that name.
Deja's grandma.
Oh yeah.
She's at the ER right now.
Oh, really?
She's having blood pressure and sugar issues, and so they're probably gonna admit her tonight.
Oh my goodness. Okay, and they're here tonight. Deja and Kelvon. Okay. All right. Let's pray for Janelle.
And then Rebecca Martin.
Rebecca Martin. Okay. All right. What else? She's pregnant. For those of you who don't know her, she's pregnant, just having some issues. Ask us to pray for her. Any in the room? Okay, I don't see any. None have come through in the comments section. I know it takes a little bit longer to type those things in and then wait for it to, the 15-second delay to get to us, but anyway.
Here, I'll add, Chris's sister texted today. She had a doctor's appointment yesterday, and there is still some scar tissue in her eye, and so she may end up having to do the surgery all over again.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Chris's sister had eye surgery, and there's the possibility that she'll have to have it again. And the second one wasn't nearly as good as the first one, right? So she'd have to go back in and have basically a third time. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, nothing else has come online. So let's pray, and then we'll go. We might even get out of here on time. See, I can just ramble and still get us out of here on time. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you that the judgment that should be ours, you took that to the cross, and Jesus bore that judgment for us. For the graciousness that goes along with that. The veil was torn, and now what we're doing right now is real, and it matters, and it makes a difference, and you hear, and all because of Jesus on the cross. And so just all the more reason that we have to thank you and to worship you and to call out to you now to take advantage of the access that you give us, of the privilege that is ours to be able to do this very thing. So God, you've invited us to bring our request to you, and that's what we do. These that have been lifted up, a couple beforehand and a couple in here tonight, and then probably as soon as we say amen or close out the stream, somebody will say, oh yeah, I forgot about this. But God, you're already there. You already know what that request is, and we just thank you that we have the assurance that you work in all things, that you've not left us alone, but that you work all things together for our good. We take comfort in that, and may the faith in that truth sustain us when nothing else will, when the circumstance itself won't. We just thank you for your goodness toward us. God, be with us as we go our separate ways and do our own thing. Help us to be mindful of you and the work that you're doing around us and that you want to do through us, and help us to always make ourselves available to you to make a difference in this world. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for our time together. We thank you for the word that we can study. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you all. Remember, next Thursday, hard to believe it's next Thursday, isn't it? Next Thursday is the National Day of Prayer, and here at Emmanuel, now I don't know what places are, I don't know what churches are doing or communities are doing where some of you may be located. But I know here in Savannah they've got a service downtown that they do every year. I'm not sure the location, but that won't be hard to find. But we're also doing our own thing here at Emmanuel where we're going to be opening up our sanctuary at 12 o'clock and 5 o'clock for a worship service. Just a brief service. I hate to say worship service, but for brief prayer services. And at 12 and at 5. But the sanctuary will be open from 12 to 7 for anybody who wants to come and just pray individually, or we'll have people who will be prayer partners if you would prefer that. So anyway, join with us in any of that you can, whatever your schedule will allow. So, all right. Thank y'all for joining with us online. Thank y'all for being with me in the room. See y'all.